Right here in front of me is my notes app. This is called Obsidian. This is my personal notes wiki. You can also click here to get the graph view, and you can see all the nodes and how they connect to each other. If you're a dungeon master and you're currently writing your notes into a notes app or a wiki or a Google Drive, I think I can make your life a lot easier. Because when I transitioned all of my notes into this software called Obsidian, prep got easier and faster. I world built more efficiently, and now all of my notes are contained in the same bit of software. Obsidian changed how I run my D&D games. Welcome to Mystic Arts, where I get unreasonably excited by simple utility. My name is Daði. I'm a professional writer and director, and today is my 10-year DMing anniversary. In this little bonus video, I'm here at my desk in my bedroom with my computer because this is where I prep. And I really want to talk to you about how I use Obsidian to prep my D&D game, what I do with it, how it works, and maybe you'll be able to figure out how you can use it for your games. So, what's Obsidian? Well, it's just a bit of software that creates text documents and then reads text documents. That's kind of it, but the power lies in the simplicity. When you're organizing stuff in computers, you need folders, headers, structure. You need to create a linear line from A to B that goes into folders, out of folders, down documents, and up documents. Turns out that's not how our brains work. So whenever we're spending a lot of time organizing our non-linear thoughts into a linear document, we tend to end up wasting a lot of energy on formatting or structure, when instead we could be writing the way we think. In our brain, our thoughts are connected like a spider's web. When they do studies of how brains work, they notice these neurons firing in a linked web-like pattern. The goal behind softwares like Obsidian is to recreate that non-linear structure that we would associate with how we think. Basically, on the PC, it's still files and folders, but in the software, it's this linked web of articles, kind of like a wiki. Except unlike most wiki software, the linking is instant and easy, and you don't need to do any hyperlinks, you don't need to copy-paste anything. It does it all for you, in a much better way than I've seen most other wiki-like software try and do. I'll tell you what this is in a second, but first I want to tell you about this bit of advice that's been bouncing around my head for 8 years. When Freddie W. made a video on how he changes the shortcuts in Premiere Pro, he talked about the value of editing at the speed of thought. He didn't want the software to get in his way. The editing software was only really any good when it got out of his way and he could edit as fast as he thought. Writing is much the same. You don't want anything in between you and the software. You want to be able to think and put it in. Basically, ideas are a fickle thing. They're like dreams. They come to you all bright and clear, and then they vanish into oblivion. They fade and dim, and one day you'll never remember them again. And unless you're lucky, something might fire up and you might immediately remember parts of it, but now it's all in a new light. So it's important that when you have ideas, you write them down instantly. And when you're in the process of prepping or world building or writing, you're having lots of ideas and they're all clear as day. And if you're not careful, you're losing them as fast as you're writing. So what you're looking for, if you're a writer, is a bit of software that gets out of your way and lets you write at the speed of thought. And for me, that's Obsidian. But if you try it and you figure out that's not working for you, then I don't think Obsidian is for you. You're going to have to find some other software that you like, but this one is the one I like. This here is the graph view. It's a large collection of articles. Each white dot represents an article that has writing in it, and each gray dot is an article I have mentioned and linked somewhere, but we haven't written anything in. Some dots are bigger than others. This indicates that there are more things, more articles that link to that dot. So if we go in here, we can hover over, let's hover over one of the biggest dots. We could see this one here. This is the Last War. In my game, I stole the Last War from Eberron and I sort of ran my players through my own version of it. And now it's 27 years later, and the Last War is this ghost that haunts all of our campaigns. And several articles, it turns out, have links to the Last War because I'm constantly talking about it. If we go from here to the next big dot, you can see the mundane world of Orathon. I like the idea that my plane is called the Mundane World. That's something I stole, I think, from Matt Colville. And you can see all of the dots that link to the Mundane World. These are probably other planes or other articles of any kind. Let's have a look at one of them. Yeah, here we go, humans. You've got a whole bunch of articles that link to humans, and they are mentioned in various articles, and then they link to this article on humans. Let's click on humans. Now you see we've left the graph view and we've opened up this page on humans. There is a bit of a quote here at the top, and it's It's cited to some bit of archaic text by Professor Engelbert Dinkelbinkel. I love naming gnomes like this. If your gnomes are named Dinkelbinkel, I don't know what you're doing. And what you can see now is that the top of the article, I spend a little bit of time describing what the article is. It is a species in Orithon. It mentions the majority of the 7 realms are thick with humans, their kingdoms, their trade, their craft, their kin. All of these now link to something. I've also got articles on elves and dwarves, and I've got an article here on culture. And you can see all the different cultures and what they are, where they're from. These are all human cultures. Being human in my world doesn't mean generic. I tend to think of humans as some of the most fascinating creatures. So they are from all kinds of places. They have all kinds of cultures, and their cultures inform what they think, what they believe, sometimes what they look like, but not necessarily. You can see here we talk about origins. It's got academics, religion, conjunction. The conjunction I stole from, I think, The Witcher. The idea that the world was different before all these spheres of planes collided with each other and created our world. You can see we've got here appearance, religion. We've got a different article specifically on human religion. And we've got the human homelands. Now this is a very dense and long article. It took me a long time to write, and I'm very proud of it. It's got links to species, which is a shorter article, but it's mostly like a structural piece. It comes from the welcome page. You can click on species and culture. Then you land on this page about some of the dominant species of my world. Humans, dwarves, elves, orcs, and small folk in my world. Halflings and gnomes are both the same species. They're just different cultures. And then I've got articles here that go into other sort of broader categories of species: fabricated humanoids, plain touch, giantkin, lost fae, and outsiders. And then there's a little note here written in character by the writer of the wiki, Professor Phineas Fogsworth. And you can see he says that he doesn't know where kobolds should go, so I've got a little article there. Now, this is essentially my wiki. If you're one of my players, you have access to pages like this. I send a link to my players, and they can see the public-facing articles like species and culture, and they could use it to read and learn more about humans, and they can learn more about the Euritic people, and they can see what they're like, and they can learn more about the Draconian people and see what they're like. That's all on here, but I also use this wiki for myself, and I use it for all of my prep notes. Some of that stuff I eventually make public, some of it I never show my players. And if you're one of my players, you might get a little sneak peek behind the curtain here, so it's up to you whether or not you want to see that. You can see I can click on 7 realms, and it gets me here to another article. This article is shorter, and you can see some of these links are bright purple, but some of them are dim purple, and that means that I haven't made anything there yet. Atroxia links to a page on Atroxia, Brightwell links to a page on Brightwell, but these other ones I haven't written about. So right now, if we go back to the graph view, those other ones would be one of these gray dots. And as you can see, there are way more gray dots than there are white dots. In our video about building worlds and how you should probably stop and you should start running the game and then you can build more, I talk about the fact that the more you know you don't know. And this is that visually represented. You can see all the white dots are the things I know. All the gray dots are the things I don't know. They're the things I've mentioned, I haven't really spent any time on, and I don't really know what they're about. There's more in the software than just a page in the middle we've been looking at. There's also this column here along the side. Here you can see we've got these folders: administrative, character, corporation, and the folders can be useful, but they're not the be-all end-all of what you're doing, because ultimately, as you can see here, we can navigate just by clicking links and going from place to place to place, bouncing around. That's just how that works. But if you want, you can also go and scroll through here, and you can see I've got a bunch of folders, and I've also got a bunch of files here at the bottom I haven't bothered putting into folders. I just haven't gotten around to it. And the fact of the matter is, when I move them into folders, nothing breaks. Articles themselves don't know what folder they're in, so it doesn't matter. You don't need to link through a series of files or folders and say, I'm talking about this file in this, down some endless rabbit hole. The linking works completely separately from all of those things. Let's just click on one of these. Here we have the Ariston Rail Company, and you can see this is an article I've written a fair bit about. You can see most of the links in here are bright purple, but there is this one gray or purple I haven't written about. You can see that I can click here on President of Atroxia. It takes me to another page. You can see I click here on Atroxian Republic, it takes me to another page, and all these things sort of link together. Now in my world, in Atroxia, which is a place in my world, it's a republic, there are corporations, and the corporations are powerful entities. They're wealthy and they control a great deal of how the nation works as a whole, and you can click on the article on corporation and suddenly we see a very different story. We see a very short article. And what I think is kind of amazing about Obsidian is unlike loads of wiki tools where they ask you about geography, population, culture, they have a list that you have to fill and columns you have to fill. With Obsidian, every article is a blank page and it's up to you to define it. Sometimes I end up spending an hour thinking about how to define a certain section of articles, but I find it to be very useful to, when I create articles, just get them out of the way and have something in here, because eventually I'll go back to this and I'll add more. Let's create an article as a part of world building. I mentioned some corporations. There are goods giants in my world. One of them is called Atroxian Steel. I haven't written an article about it. As you can see, if I right click here, I can also, just by moving my cursor around, you can see it's in this double square brackets right here, bam, bam. What that means is I've told the software, this is an article. And it is now pretending as if that article exists. And if I click the link, it immediately creates the article. See, it showed up just over here. And it is now a part of how my wiki functions. And whenever I create a new article, I make sure to define it at the top. So the very first sentence is defining what this is. What is Atroxian Steel? Well, I'll start by saying Atroxian Steel. I bold it to tell myself this is the article we're on. It is an Atroxian corporation. You can see when I go square brackets, it suggests all the options. Is it Atroxia? No, Atroxia is a place. Is it Atroxian? Yeah, like the culture? Yeah, I think that's what I'm talking about. I could also pick Atroxian Sea, Atroxian Navy, Atroxian Army. It's got a whole bunch of these things, but we don't need to worry about any of that right now. We're talking about Atroxian. There we go. That's the culture. If I click on that, it takes us to the culture page, but we're not done. It is an corporation. And you can see when I write in corpo, it gives me corporation as one of the options, but it's also got Row Corporation, Mallory Corporation, a whole bunch of other corporations and a whole list of options. I could keep typing and eventually I'll get somewhere, but it is a corporation, so I'll select that. Notice there, I knew Republic was going to come up, and I didn't need to write the whole word. In some wiki software, what you end up having to do is you go, write the word, and then you have to put next to it a link, and you go, and then you have to go find the link somewhere, and you have to put it in here. And it just takes a lot of time, and I don't have time for that. I'm busy, I'm world building. I want to write at the speed of thought. Now, I've run into a bit of a problem. I know that Atroxian Steel has featured in some sessions in my adventures. I don't remember who's the CEO, who I said runs the shop, who's in charge, but I might have said those things. So it's time for me to go searching. So this is the folder view here on this side. We're going to click the search icon and we're just going to type Atroxian Steel. You can see it shows me this article exists. It shows me a whole bunch of other articles that exist, including, you can see here, Everlasting 1, 2, 6, 7. These are session notes, all of which I write in Obsidian too. And those session notes, it is not searching for what they're called. If you were doing this on your hard drive, you're clicking the Windows key and you typed in Atroxian Steel, you'd only get files that say Atroxian Steel in it. But here, in this session, in a session called Steel, I have mentioned Atroxian Steel. Turns out, no, I've just mentioned Steel Barrel. Okay, that's not very useful. Do I mention Atroxian Steel anywhere else in here? Outbid by Atroxian Steel. You can see here is an unlinked mention. I say Atroxian Steel. We can just do double brackets. Now it's linked. This is me looking at session notes for a solo session I ran in preparation for one of my main games. This is one of 38 such solo sessions, and you can see the prep word count is 2,697 words. I normally don't prep that much, but I do love prepping, so I spend a lot of time on it. I like writing a bunch of scenes out. But I have run several dungeons, several adventures off of nothing but index cards. And if you want to run a session like that, you can. You can just write down, this happens, this happens, this happens, and then figure it out on the spot. I do it all the time, and I don't think my players know the difference most of the time. So I mentioned a person here, Astrid Neal, Regional Construction Manager, but that's not the CEO, so let's keep looking. You can also put it in quotation marks to only get specific mentions of the entire phrase you're looking for. So after a quick look, it turns out that I never mentioned the name of the CEO. We're just going to close all these articles I've opened up. We'll go back here, and we can make one up. And whenever I get into trouble, I go visit our good friend Emily at fantasynamegenerators.com. I don't actually know her, I'm just a big fan. Elliot Matthews. Perfectly ordinary name. Let's use that. Now, if you're running a game and you're thinking Elliot Matthews sounds like the name of a friend of mine or somebody I went to college with, and you don't want to use that, that's fine. But I'm Icelandic, so American names sound kind of fantastical to me. So I use them. Now, I could now put double brackets around this, and that would create a link to an article that doesn't exist. But I know myself. I know that I'm probably never going to write an article about Elliot Matthews. So I'm going to close this. But one day I might, in that case. let's say I do end up years from now writing an article about Elliot Matthews, and we click on this, and let's say I hadn't linked it. It's just blank like that. Well, there's no need to worry. On Elliot Matthews, you can see, if I go to backlinks down here, it says 0 backlinks, but it goes unlinked mention. Atroxia and Steel, Elliot Matthews, and you can click on that, and it shows you, look, you have this here, but you didn't link it. You could then choose to link it. Let's undo that. I'm not going to actually write an article about Elliot Matthews. Another thing is, here I say CEO, but I haven't defined what that means anywhere. So I could go put it in square brackets, but hang on. Why did that show up gray? I know I've written an article about CEOs. Turns out it's not called CEO. I go, hang on a minute. Maybe it is Chief Executive Officer. I didn't use the abbreviation. I made myself a rule that when running this, I would never use the abbreviation if there exists a full title somewhere or full phrase. But I don't want it to say companies run by Chief Executive Officer Elliot Matthews. I'd much rather just say CEO. So what I can do is I can, after the article has been tagged here, I can put a little vertical line. I can write down CEO, and then it appears CEO. I can also write Muffin, and then it says Muffin. I can put anything I want there, is the point. That doesn't have to say either CEO or Muffin, but yeah, I can put down anything, and then there it is. Now, I could go and create a really long article about Atroxia and Steel, but at the moment, I don't know anything more about them. So I'm actually perfectly happy just having it be this one sentence. In that case, I just close it. I just move on. See, now it links. You can click it, go there. That's fine. Corporation, Atroxia and Steel. Very good. So why is this good for session prep? Well, let's have a look at one of my session prep notes. You see here, I just search for what I know the article is called. I know it's called this. You can see this here is the second act of my main game. I know it's the second act based on just roughly what I think the story is like. The game is called Kingmaker Everlasting. My main games are called Kingmaker because of the political implications I like. We were inspired by the Pathfinder Adventure Path 10 years ago, and now we've long since forked away from it, but we still like the evocative word Kingmaker, so we use it. You can see I've got a quote here from one of the NPCs. You can see I haven't tagged Atroxia. I could. Nothing wrong with it. I could also tag Roderick Maxley, and that'll work. I know I've created all those. You can see I've got a little blurb here. I've got sections on the history, factions, gazetteer, and encounters in Loggers County. I've written them all in here. And you can see I've got the session notes for all the sessions. Boom, 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 boom. It starts at 39 because we did 38 solo sessions in Act 1. And now we're at the 39th group session. And then we've counted up since then. The 54th session I just ran a couple of days ago. And I am preparing to run a solo session for just one of the players. I had this idea that I could take each of the players and run an adventure as a flashback. So last session ended on Emily seeing this portrait of a ship that they all know is in the adventure. I've teased it so far, but I told her this is the first time she saw it, and I told her that she recognized the ship as one she'd seen before. Then I played the credits music, and everyone goes, ooh, because that's now what her adventure is going to be about. So as an example, let's go prep an adventure. This is a single session adventure. It's a one-shot for one player, and it's going to be a flashback, so it's going to be her when she's younger, and then we're going to end with bringing it back to the modern day. I click here, and you can see, I've already created an article before, and it says Everlasting 55, the City of Adventure, and then on all lowercase it says Attacker with Pirates Not at Sea. I wrote this down because in the middle of the session she was asked if she'd ever been attacked by pirates, and she jokingly said, not at sea. And I thought, all right, I now need to put that in the flashback session. Now, look, this is an empty prep document, and that might be a little daunting. Now, if I were somebody who knows how Obsidian works and I'm really proficient in it, I might go and say, this is why you need a template. And there are templates you can get online. There are all kinds of structures. I am not that advanced. I am a real newbie in this software. I don't like it being too complicated. I enjoy the simplicity. So what I do is I have a little article called Session Prep Format, and it's like this, and I just Control-A, Control-C, Control-V. Done. I'm going to take this little note, I'm going to put it here into the session description, and look, now it looks like I've done some thought. The session prep format I use to begin every session, it starts now with back to the PC handout or back to the Act 2 article, which is this one we were looking at earlier. Then it's got introduction, And you can see here I've got some table rules that I sometimes cite to my players in order to remind us that we like playing games where stuff happens and people are immersed. I find that if I don't remind everybody of this, we tend to have little sort of wibbly wobbly games. So sometimes I'll make an effort to mention these things out loud, and people are usually grateful. In fact, the player who played Emily, Salka, she said in one of these sessions, this is a good way to summarize the rules. No joking around, this is Kingmaker. She was very serious. We're not allowed to joke, this is Kingmaker. We take our game very seriously. And then I've got a session description. I imagine this as if you go on IMDb and you look at an episode, there's often 3 sentences that say what happens in the episode. That would go here. I've got opening monologue. Every session I run begins with me talking and music happening. And the goal there is to get everybody to listen to the music, hear me talk, and then get ready to play a game of D&D. So I've got the same beginning blurb every time in order to add on to that sort of Pavlovian response we've talked about before. I'm going to keep that the same. I'm going to have to pick what time, what day it is, and what month. I'm not going to do that right now. And then I've got sort of chapters and scenes. And in my experience, I tend to split sessions down into sections. For example, in the session I ran before we took our holiday break, this session took place over the course of 2 sections. It started with a fight, because the session before ended with a fight being started. So I've got one section here called Hungry Mutts, and it describes the tower they're in, what happens if the Warforged in the party goes unconscious. The Warforged has never been unconscious in his life, and in my setting, their consciousness is made up of these different souls, these different memories. That was all invented by this player, so I'm making sure that when he goes unconscious, I feed into his sort of fantasy of what he wants and what he believes would happen. And he gets these memories of the memories that create his consciousness. So I wrote a little section for me to read out loud to the player. I wrote down that if somebody dies, they could instead get a permanent injury. This is a homebrew rule I'm using right now to make sure that all of these characters we soloed up have possibilities to evade death, maybe once or twice, or maybe just in the beginning of the campaign. I don't know yet. These are all header 4, but then we get to the next section, which is header 2. You can see that's 2 hashtags here. I can show you a bit of this formatting in a bit. And then I describe the town they're in. So section 1, the fight. Section 2, the town. And you can see these are some scenes that I think might happen. There's a geyser, and there's this vision one of them might get. And then at the bottom, I've got progression. And at the very bottom, I have post-mortem. So these are just notes I write down as we play. Whenever something happens, I just go, enter, something happened. And I put that down on the list here. And then, when it's time for me to run the next session, I can very quickly read the post-mortem section. I can know, oh, these are the things that happened. So in here, I've got a little format pasted, but this isn't a lot of work. You could recreate this very quickly. In fact, let's just go. I think the session begins in the arena. Just write down a description. This text language is called Markdown. You can do it all via keyboard shortcuts. If you're not comfortable with that, there is another way. Let's say bad guy 1, I want to be a header. I can then just go in here, format, paragraph, heading 4, and now it does it for us. So if you're not proficient in shift clicking, there it is. But you can also do it all on the fly. You can write something down and then Control B or Control I, and then I just type my notes as I go along, blah 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 blah. And then here's the thing: sometimes I realize I have to make something up, or maybe I'm referencing something I've already made up. So I go Freeport. Man, I know this adventure takes place in a city called Freeport. It's a city that was published by Green Ronin around the year 2000, I think. Like many other campaign settings, I just stole it and put it in my world. So Freeport is a thing that exists in my setting, so I've got it here. And you notice I haven't written an article about it, so I might not write one before the session comes up. I don't know. You'd be surprised by how much I don't know when I'm running a session. I find that the right amount of ignorance can create a whole lot of inspiration. But maybe there is something I mentioned that I want to make sure we make an article for, so I know the one thing that's going to come up, we're going to delete this sort of example here. One thing that's going to come up, and at some point, I'm going to have to write an article that's called the Hermes. Now, that's the ship that started this whole flashback, and I'm assuming it's probably the first thing that happens. So I'm going to have to make an article about it, Hermes. And I could just say, she sees the Hermes. And if I were writing this in Word, like I used to do all my prep, I would now have to go, the Hermes is a shipping vessel, blah, 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 blah. But I don't have to do any of that. I can just say she sees the Hermes, and then I click. Now I've got an article on the Hermes. There we go. The Hermes was a vessel ordered by the Sea Lord of Freeport to be constructed for the winner of the Bounty Fair Games. If you're not playing in my setting, none of this might mean anything to you. And if you are playing in my setting, still none of this might mean anything to you. But this means something to me, and I'm done for now. I don't need to add anything more right now. I'll add more as I go along, and I'll go through and I'll write the adventure. Now, what I haven't decided is whether seeing the Hermes is the first thing that happens or the last thing that happens. Let's imagine I've done a whole bunch of writing here. Alora Mipsum. There we go. Let's imagine there's a whole bunch of writing here, and there's a whole bunch of writing all over the document. What I really want to do is I want to take this and I want to make it be the first thing. Well, now I have to sort of do that. I have to select it. Oh no, actually I want it to be the last thing. So I have to undo, and I have to erase, and I check the formatting. I have to go put it down here and make sure that's okay. And right now it seems fairly easy, but if you've got a document as big as this one, and it's got all these headers and subheaders, especially if we go look at another solo session, the Halls of Power, this is one of the longest prep documents I've ever written. It's 4,500 words. Let's say I need to move a section in here. That's a lot of work. That's you know, you gotta, okay, where does it end? It ends here, and I have to select the whole thing. Oh, there it's written, okay, and then we cut it. And it's a whole bunch of work. This is why I love Obsidian. It's got powerful outlining tools. Whenever you're writing in software that is basically based in HTML, you can't move things around as easy because they all need to be sort of referenced within each other and stuff like that. But this, what I can do is I can just click here on outline. And you can see it says introduction, session description, opening monologue, and then it's got all the sections of the adventure. And what I can do is I can just grab any one section. Backroom deals. Let's say I want to take all the backroom deals and I want to make them happen first. Well, instead of going here and going and selecting, okay, and then moving it, what I can just do is I can grab backroom deals, move it to the top. Now they're all there. I can grab the new apartment, move it above the backroom deals. I can take this bit with the Obsidian Palace, move it all the way down to the bottom, and suddenly I've reorganized the entire adventure based on what I thought I needed to do. And I can grab sections within, I can move them around, I can move them up and down. It's really, really powerful what you can do with this. I now have to go put everything right. So you can really just sort of swap things around willy-nilly, and here you can do the same. Obviously it's not as impressive when it's an empty document, but these powerful outlining tools are kind of insane. Also, this thing with the Hermes, you know, I might go, hang on, I need to know about the SBA, the Small Folk Benefits Association. Which is a mafia that exists in Freeport. They're all halflings and gnomes, and they look out for other halflings and gnomes, but they're also a crime family. And you can click here, and I can go, hang on, I mentioned small folk here. Here I mentioned the SBA. They raised a large militia and engaged the bull sharks. Now that's a marine regiment, I know. It says so earlier in this document. So I want to make sure that the small folks' large militia comes into play. Well, now I've searched for it, I can just sort of chuck it in here, and now I can start outlining the session. Well, there is a scene where they deal with the SBA, so I'm just going to go SBA scene. I know that for some reason we want to meet the SBA. I don't know what it is yet. Right now I'm just outlining. I'm going to delete this lorem ipsum nonsense. I know that the Hermes shows up at some point. I know that at the end of the session she's going to be found by her friend Rapid. I know that somewhere along the way she's going to be doing arena fighting. We're going to call it the Bounty Fair Games. I know that I think the Hermes is the first thing that happens. So I'm going to move it back up top, and then I'm going to say, you know, drinking, because I know she's drinking a lot. She likes to drink, and this way I can just sort of start writing down scene ideas, and then often I realize actually, I think there's a bit between seeing the Hermes and having a drink. So I'm going to put that here, and I'm going to say something happens. I don't know yet. And the thing I like about this is that since it's all so movable, it's not set in stone, it's not holy, and the formatting, it doesn't have any pages in it. It doesn't, you know, I don't have to worry about the spacing. It's all a bit sort of slapdash, though it looks kind of nice, but it's all a bit slapdash. I feel free just writing down ideas and seeing where it takes me. I don't feel constrained by the software. I just feel like I can create. Let's say I want to make sure that Bounty Fair is something that the player, Emily's player, knows about before we get there. I want to know that Emily understands what the Bounty Fair is. So I could just go Bounty Fair. I know I've written an article on that. Well, what I can do is I can publish this article. I pay a monthly fee to have access to something called Obsidian Publish, where I can publish these articles up onto a wiki, and my players have access to them. And then I can just copy paste the link and I can send it to her. If you're not willing to pay for the publish link, you can't do that. But what you can do is you can snipping tool it and send the screenshot. And also, there might be some kinds of software you can use to connect things into a wiki, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Another thing is that I'm writing all this on my PC here in my bedroom, but I don't run my games in my bedroom. That would be weird. I run them in my living room. So if I now go into the living room, I need to make sure that I have all these files up to date. And there is a bit of software Obsidian sells called Obsidian Sync, which lets multiple people work at the same time. I think it kind of works like Google Drive. But that costs a bit of money, and I don't need that functionality. I just need the files to be the same. I don't need them to actually be editable at the same time. So what I do is I just save all of these files on my vault. That's what Obsidian calls your files. I save them all on my Dropbox. I'm already paying for Dropbox. Dropbox syncs all these files instantly. So by the time I've saved something here, I walk over to my laptop and it's synced over there. And also you can do that for free. You can have Obsidian for free and not pay for anything, and then put it all on your Dropbox, and your first 2 gigabytes or something are free. You could put it all on there, and now you've got a 2 gigabyte vault of files that you didn't have to pay for, and you can move them anywhere you like. All of these files are saved locally. They're on my hard drive. If Dropbox goes under, it's all still on my hard drive. If Obsidian stops being updated, well, I still have Obsidian. But even if Obsidian breaks, we get new versions of Windows and suddenly all these files don't work anymore, the files aren't special. There's nothing unique about them that requires Obsidian to open them. These are just regular text files on my PC. I can find the City of Adventure file right here. I can click on it, and there it is, exactly as I left it. Now, it's got some formatting on it, but this is just markdown formatting. There are plenty of software that can read this, and it'll display properly. So I am not screwed if Obsidian goes out of business. It is always up to date, most recent copy on my hard drive. So it's free, safe, secure, future-proof. I don't know what else you would want, but plenty of people find what I'm doing to be very basic, and they use Obsidian in more advanced ways than I do. And I think if you're interested in that, you should go check out those people. I don't think I can teach you how they do it. I'm not that good at this. This has been a very basic introduction of the software, but there's so much more you could do. There are plugins, many of which were specifically designed for D&D, like stat blocks, initiative trackers, fantasy calendars. There's a million functions and a huge community of people creating content for it, coding for it. You can also find GitHub repos online of things like the entire 5.1 SRD or SRDs for different systems. People get really into this, and for some it becomes a hobby in and of itself, and it's a powerful tool. But like I said, I'm a newbie, so the best I can do is recommend you channels where you can take a bit more of a deep dive. First off, if you just want to know a little bit more than what I'm talking about now, you want to get into plugins, you want to see another D&D tuber talk about this, there's a splendid video made by Powerword Spill where he talks about exactly that, and he sets up his entire Obsidian to look like a 5e source book. Martin, one of our channel members, introduced us to several different people online who are doing tutorials for this. One of them is Josh Plunkett and his playlist on Obsidian for TTRPGs. Then there is the expert, Nicole Vanderhoven, and she's got, I think, 170 some videos on the topic. They go really into the weeds. Some of them are D&D specific, some of them are just Obsidian in general. The pair of them can teach you much better than I could ever dream to. So I've put links to all of their stuff in the description below to a specific playlist you can get started on. And if you download Obsidian, you realize the installation is a little bit more than what you were prepared for. I don't find it all that complicated, but if you need a little bit of help, Nicole Vanderhoven has a video on that as well, and I put that in the description. And if you want to see how I use this software to make an adventure from scratch, we're going to do that on stream live together in 3 parts. First, I'm going to make a premise, then I'm going to make the adventure, and then I'm going to prep the first session. I'm going to try and stream about once a week throughout January, and the first stream is going to be on Sunday night. And I'm going to try and make sure that when the video is done, you get the VOD, and then you can see the whole unfiltered process of how it is for me to create an adventure from start to finish using Obsidian. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend, and if you want to support the channel directly, you can consider becoming a channel member and getting access to our exclusive Discord. We're both on there along with players from our group, and we're happy to talk about the way we play D&D or the way you play D&D or anything else you want to talk about. If you don't find yourself able to support or you don't want to, that's fine. There are a whole bunch of other ways you can show your support that we really appreciate. You can like the video, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.